Have you ever noticed disparities in how your coworkers are treated by management? Have you ever questioned why you might find yourself treating one colleague or customer more favorably than another? The answer lies in bias. I stand before you not as a speaker, but as someone who has both experienced bias and a victim, and has been an unintentional perpetrator in the workplace of bias. It's a reality that often goes unnoticed, but has far reaching consequences. Today, I want to shed light on the various types of bias, their impact, and why it's crucial to be aware of them. Bias takes many forms. One of the most prevalent is prejudice. This can manifest in various forms, such as racial bias. We've all witnessed or experienced instances where race influences how we communicate at work, whether directly or indirectly. In my own experience, I have actually seen true racial bias. Where I used to work at the supermarket I was employed at back in Cleveland, we had a much older Italian grandma at the register. So whenever a customer of the African American ethnicity would walk in there, she would never discriminate, but she would give them a very weird look to make them feel uncomfortable, to make them feel not wanted. She might not have been purposely conscious of what she was doing, and she might have just thought if she was from a different time, but that is a great form of racial bias in the workplace. And this can happen in many different instances, whether young, old, or what about. Similarly, bias based on sexual orientation is another issue that's even more prevalent in many people's lives. The way we communicate at work can be influenced by preconceived notions about someone's sexual orientation. From my own experience, I've seen that typically men are treated with more respect than women, even if the woman has more experience. For example, at my current hotel where I work at, we have a manager and we have another male assistant manager. I have noticed some of my colleagues have treated the assistant manager with more respect than our actual manager. And even if they're not consciously aware of it, there is a very good chance that her sexual orientation has a lot to do with that. Religious bias is also a big contributor in the workplace with how we communicate at work. People who aren't seen as Christian are very often discriminated against. People who are seen as atheists are seen as weird and analytical. So people who are often atheists are assumed to be working in STEM or more analytical jobs, which is a stereotype that is not true. And then there's also people of the Muslim faith, which are seen to be more erratic, which is also simply not true. And we also have had customers who are uncomfortable when my coworkers have worn a hijab before. Conversely, moving on to favoritism, it's not uncommon for individuals to be treated based on common interests and length of acquaintance. Colleagues with shared hobbies or long-term relationships with supervisors might see themselves enjoying preferential treatment. I've been the most recipient and giver of such favoritism before. Where I work, at my grocery store a couple of years ago, my father was actually the owner. So I would notice everyone was a lot nicer to me than other 16 to 17-year-olds working in the produce section. It had nothing against me. I was just as hard of a worker as they were, and they were just as hard as workers I was. The sole bias came solely on the person who I knew. And since those people knew me longer, my coworkers I'm referring to. Conversely, disliking someone due to trivial matters or perceiving their actions as incorrect by our standards is another form of bias. Our personal biases can lead us to treat individuals less favorably, impacting their growth and well-being. I've had to confront my own bias and acknowledge they cause harm. For example, one bias I've been unintentionally noticed towards is I tend to treat shorter people with less respect than taller people. It's completely uncoordinatial. I'm not noticing that I'm doing it, but I have done it before. And so that's a form of bias I've had to work on. In conclusion, bias is an unfortunate reality in our world, and especially pronounced in the world of business. There are many biases, whether it be from prejudice bias, favoritism, or disliking someone based on their personality. But the first step to beating bias is being aware of it, because being aware of your biases can be the first step to stopping it. Thank you.